Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Miller. Every week, I chat with fascinating people from all walks of life in order to bring you knowledge, inspiration, and insight. If you enjoy the show, you can support it by subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend. This is the Jeremy Miller Podcast. When you have like the cameras and the mics and the headphones and everything, it like kind of throws you off because it's like it detracts from like a normal, like natural conversation. But I think once you get into it, you're like, oh, I mean, we're just talking.
I actually think it's an advantage. So I did host a podcast with a friend. We did like 50 episodes.
Oh, okay.
And so I've had reps talking into the mic.
Yeah.
And what me and the friend always said is that like by creating like the artifice here, it brings a focus and an attention to the conversation that can kind of be lost when you're just hanging out. And I felt like it did a better job of letting us get into some things that, I don't know, maybe you just let drift otherwise.
Right.
So I kind of like some artificial boundary or like guidance, like, hey, this is time to like focus and bring what you got to bear.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Like I feel like it, I don't know, it like seduces some stuff out of you that otherwise it wouldn't, if that's the right word.
Yeah, it does.
Know. Yeah.
Well, you know, if one person shares, you feel compelled to reciprocate.
Right.
And so kind of automatically by signing up for an intentional conversation about like things that matter to you, you know that like, okay, this is time to get into something. It's kind of akin to therapy in that way, in my experience. And so as soon as somebody starts giving, the other person starts giving. And I think that's what makes it a better apparatus for meaningful conversation.
I love that.
So one of the things I've admired, and I don't know when we're starting, if this is like a soft roll in.
Kind of. I mean, we can let it rip.
No, that's
Why
good.
not?
That's good. I was going to say, one of the things I've really loved about the Jeremy Miller podcast is you have a lot of people who are from walks that are obviously not self-serving to you. You know, you have a larger audience than some of your guests or many of your guests, and yet you bring them in and we get to hear a unique perspective that otherwise we wouldn't. And giving a platform to people who have interesting stories to share is really powerful. Like, I think we all want our lives to enrich other people's lives. And, you know, part of the reason I follow you to begin with, and you're younger than me, and yet I see you as a little bit of a role model. Like, you're doing these things that are impressive and take focus and discipline and, you know, honestly, a little bit of grace to the people that you're trying to build a community with. And so to see you do that for other people, it's like, that's what a conversation is for. It is to like give and receive. And I kind of think that almost everybody would be well served to like, you know, even if you didn't record, like have a podcast, talk to people, and just like have good conversations in your life.
I love that. Well, thanks, dude. Thanks for the kind words.
Dude, it's been great. I mean, the quality of the content, and then like, you know, the guests have been great, but the quality of the content makes it easy to engage with. It's like,
right.
You know, it's like having nutritious food, but it tastes great.
Yeah, right.
So
that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, as long as the quality's there, it's like, yeah, I'm going to eat it. And then it's like, oh, wait, this is actually helping me too. What a benefit.
Dude, I'll gladly take that compliment. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest inspirations for the podcast was Joe Rogan, for sure. Do you listen to him ever?
Dude, it's so weird to say because so many people, he changed my life.
Oh, yeah. Dude, me too. Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this right now if it weren't for what he's done. But it's for the same reason I like his stuff, is like, it's called the Joe Rogan podcast, but you don't really listen to hear him. You listen to hear the people he has on and like his genuine interest and curiosity in those people. So that's, I mean, that's why I liked doing the podcast. That's why I started. It was like, I can use my Instagram or my YouTube to like tell my stuff, but like I'll use a podcast to share other people's stuff. And
sure.
You said it's not self-serving, but I feel like in a way it almost is, because I get like this firsthand experience and interaction with people.
Well, I say that, but the truth is, and you discover this at some point in your life, anytime that you are giving to others, you're teaching, befriending, guiding, that effort is always self-serving because it brings out the best of you. like you have to elevate your vision of yourself in order to engage people on that type of a perspective. Like, I have this thing, I want to give it to you and experience you through the activity. And in doing that, it's always going to be self-serving. Like, to give is to take.
Right. 100%.
But I had a question for you, and then, because this is the Jeremy Miller podcast, and I listen, and I'm a fan, and I came on following you. I think you had like 5,000-6,000 followers on Instagram at the time.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was dumb luck. I was
Dang.
following. I'd just gotten into a lot of the running content on Instagram as I was starting to run more distances, and Matt Choi came across, and started following him, and then like through that, like started seeing your stuff, and I was like, this is connecting with me. This is good stuff. And I've seen that following for you grow, and yet like your approach to life and like your general principles and methodology seem like unflinching. It's like, well, this is just who the guy is. And that's encouraging. But as I see you building everything, I'm curious, and this is a question I like to ask a lot of people, but let's say like, however it comes in, you won the lottery, you had $20 million in your pocket. What would your life look like if we just gave you $100 million?
Oh gosh, dude, that's a great question. Honestly, I probably wouldn't. Dude, I don't know. That's a good question. You really put me on the spot here.
Well, the reason I ask is because it seems like it's kind of like, I wouldn't say idyllic. I know how hard content creation is.
Right.
Like, it is a grind. And I saw all those boxes sitting out in front of you that you boxed yourself for your switchback orders. Yeah. Like, it is hard work. And yet, kind of to a conversation you had with Travis Osborne on your last episode, the work may not feel like work if it's a burden you have voluntarily chosen to lift, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, there's no opposition to your desire to do it. And so I ask that because it seems like, I don't know, would you just keep doing what you're doing?
I think that's probably the right answer. I think that's what I would say is like, maybe not to the extent, because there's some days it's a grind and I have to constantly be like, okay, what's my why? Like, why do I keep doing this? Why do I put out a video every day? But and then I think on the days, like if I don't really have much to do, like I don't have like an agenda for that day, it's like, I still just want to do those things. Like I feel like I'm missing something. Like people always talk about retirement, I think. This microphone sounds weird. Maybe I just need to get closer. It's sounding weird. Anyways, I think people always talk about retirement and like, the golden years of like, oh, you don't have to work, you don't have to do anything. But I don't know. Like, I think maybe that changes when you work for yourself too, because that's just like your daily life. You don't have a boss or like a paycheck necessarily that's keeping you there doing it.
Yeah.
It's like you're there on your own. And that's like I think once you learn how to be self-starting, maybe that's where it's just like ingrained in you. And I think you're just going to do it forever. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I could never visualize myself when I'm like 60, 70, just like, I don't know, sitting on the couch all day. I couldn't do it. So to answer your question, long way around that is like, I think I'd probably still in some way do what I'm still doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you make some little changes, right? Like, let's pay someone to box the orders.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, that's step one.
Sure. But yeah, I think that's one of the principal things I admire is just the structure of the world you've built, because I work for Cisco Systems currently, and they frequently get like, #1 workplace in America type of awards.
Really?
And it's a great place to work. Getting a job with them changed my life. It has created stability and peace of mind that I never had before. And yet when I think like, well, if I got the lottery ticket here, my life would almost change zero, except that my work time for Cisco would just become writing full time. I'd still work out. I'd still do all the same things with my kids and wife. Like, I don't even think I would travel that much more just because of like the demands of fatherhood. A little bit, I'm sure. But I would just write more often and work a little less. So like, there's one very obvious tweak.
Right.
But to see anybody who has a life that, I typically think that most people live in thirds. I sleep, I do what I want and I do what I have to do to meet stability. And I think the trick is like, how do I take the what I have to do and turn it into the whatever I want to do? And so it's like, I've got this big time I'm awake where it's just mine and I sleep. And it seems from the outside that you have mostly done that, and I applaud it. And I always wanted to ask because, like, is that true, or would he tweak?
No, dude, I think that's a great way to put it. I like thinking of life in those thirds. Obviously, that's a very like blanketed way of saying that, but I think when you put in those buckets, I think that's the way it is. And I think unfortunately, a lot of people don't get enough of that middle time of like the time of doing things they actually want to do, because of like the demands of society, and like you gotta have money, you gotta, be able to buy groceries and pay your rent and stuff. And I think, I don't know. In my experience, the coolest part about that is you have control over how you spend your time. Like, it's like I wasn't born to like a rich family. Like we were pretty, I'd say like lower middle class. Like as soon as I turned 18, 19, my parents were basically like, you're on your own. So it's like, I'm thankful for that because it made me figure my shit out and like become independent.
Yeah.
And obviously some people start further ahead or further behind from other people. But I think at the end of the day, like if you really want to have that passion become what allows you to make money, like I think you can do it. Like you can, I basically sit in here and edit videos and talk to clients and record podcasts all day.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't know. I think there's a way to put it. I'm trying to figure out the right way to say it, of like anybody can do it. It's just you have to make the choice to do it. It's not like I have something that you don't or something. It's just, you make the choices, and then enough of those choices lead to this outcome. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I think so. It's interesting. When I think of like the spectrum of life, like people, we're mostly the same, right? We vary in degree, but not in kind. We have a pretty, like, there is something that it is like to be a person.
Right.
And I think, I frequently use this analogy of like a boat on the water. So I think everybody kind of starts, and you just mentioned like the type of household you were born into. You're kind of going where the currents take you, right? And you just float along. And it seems like the path has been laid out pretty cleanly. Like most people do school, you feel like you should probably go to college or just like get a job to pay for things. And then at some point in your life, people have like, an awakening or a thing that they are unhappy with, a struggle. It's like maybe they look in the mirror and there's a little something in the midsection, or maybe they wake up in a weird place because they passed out somewhere. Like there is an event that's like, I gotta get this shit together.
Yeah.
And I think most people's natural response to that is like, let's break out the oars and like, let's row like hell. And they change the nature. Like I'm trying to become the engine of my direction. And I think one thing that happens to a lot of people is they are met with the massive resistance. Like this is hugely fatiguing, or I'm not getting any traction. I'm rowing like hell and I still feel like I'm just out in the middle of the ocean. Where am I going? It's not working. And then what happens to some people, and it seems to me like you've captured a version of this, and I know for sure that I have, is at some point you realize that the ocean and the wind and the randomness of life, the things that just happen, they're not good or bad. They're just the opportunities. They're just the landscape. And you need to find a way to when there's stagnation, some rowing is required, extra effort. But you need to find a way to harness the atmosphere around you. You're not a rower and you're not adrift, you're a sailor. And if you can approach life that way, it's kind of like when you figure out zone 2 training.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't have to hit this hard. I just have to hit it consistently and measured, and I will get there eventually. And everybody has their own version of that. And I think that figuring it out sooner is an advantage. I know where I want to be, and I'm building towards it. But once you saddle yourself with some responsibilities like children and the futures you want for them, you kind of have to measure your approach, like weigh the risk and the time you have to make a full effort and balance it from there. But to your original point, so within your power.
Yeah.
You just need a plan, work it hard.
Dude, I love that, man. You're so good at speaking. Has anybody ever told you that?
Well, I mean, most people would tell me I could speak a little less. I could take up the oxygen in a minute.
Well, I will say, dude, your book is so, like, I've been listening to the audio version, and it seems like I got to give you kudos too. Like, we never had a phone call or like a voice message or anything until we met like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But like, you're the same person like that I gathered from your book, basically. And I'm like, I think like 7 or 8 chapters in right now. And I think the audio version helps because I get to hear your voice and everything. Yeah. But like, I can tell like just the way you think about things and the way you speak, and you've got like this very humble way of doing it, and like there's like a lot of humility, which I like.
Well, life has humbled me.
That's an understatement, I feel like.
Yeah, look, man, failure it's cliched, but it's a great teacher. And when you can learn that it's not something to be afraid of, but something to be embraced. My favorite poem ever, and I'm not like a big poetry guy, but this one stuck with me. It's by a poet called Rumi. The poem is called The Guest House. And what he speaks about in it is that your emotions and your experiences, they visit you. And they are not good or bad. Like, you should let each of them in, like open arms, embrace them, because they will bring you gifts if you are a good host. And once I figured that out about my own experiences, like, I didn't need to keep running away from the failures. Like, in my time, I have had DUIs. I have done jail time. I have laid on a bed in the ICU with leukemia. I went 33 days before I tasted fresh oxygen again. And once I could stop running from those things and just embrace them and say like, hey, these are the stuff like I need to work on, everything got easier. I wasn't afraid of my own stuff. And so I don't know that any of the insight I have to share in the book is like entirely unique, but I know it is, and maybe that's the power of it, is that it's not unique. A lot of people have their own version of failure, and that by sharing the things I was able to do to rebuild my life and actually find pride in the failures that I've had, the analogy I use frequently for this, and I don't know if you know Joe Rinaldi.
Yeah. Have you done his podcast?
No, I'm recording with him in December.
Oh, nice.
I'm excited to talk to him too. I love his perspective on life. He's got such a unique struggle he's battling. The way he's embraced it has been inspirational.
He's like going blind, right?
Yeah. And to know that that's just coming over, like
just looming over you.
Oh, it's an incredibly daunting, just shadow to deal with every day. So I love the way he's turned that into something positive. And one thing he said that I've expanded upon as I think about it is he talked about being planted, not buried. And those actions are very similar things, right? You take something, you put it in the ground, and it's covered. And to be buried, it's just dead and gone. But if you're planted, it's taking all that shit you're buried under, and it becomes the fertilizer you need to grow into who you wish to become. And maybe even who you're meant to be, depending on your perspective on, providence and all that. But I think that embracing that, stop running away from the problems, stop hiding the problems. And the first step is saying, hey, I have a problem, and knock that out, focus on it, banish it, control it, whatever you got to do to wrangle, whatever that inner demon is. And then you almost don't even need to do the other stuff. Most people are talented, and they do want to be good and whatever the thing it is they're endeavoring to do. Like once you get that thing that is holding you back under control, it's like dropping a rucksack. And it's like, oh, this actually isn't that hard at all. Life, not so tough.
Right.
So that's been the big lesson of my life. And it's what I try to convey in the book. And running was the first tool, really the first tool in my kit to start getting control of things.
I say we go back to like square one, at least where the book starts. Or I guess the earliest thing I hear you really talk about in the book is like the leukemia story. What was that like?
Oh, man. Yeah. Interesting is the first word that comes to mind. Because what happened, man, is so I was getting married. I think I'm 100% healthy. And all of a sudden I get a fever, a cold. It is 6 days before my wedding. And my wife is just like, you are not okay.
How old were you at this time?
31.
Okay.
Which, let me tell you, is way too late to like start being intentional with your life. Like, you don't need to be like bordering on middle age to say like, hey, I should probably start making some better choices. But you know, the stuff happens when it happens. So she rushes me to the urgent care. The urgent care takes a look at me for like 3 minutes and they're just like, nah, just send me to the ER.
Oh gosh.
ER's tinkering with me for hours, running tests, like cutting into me, taking blood. And I'm at that point, I'm so hopped up on morphine and whatever, like chill pill they gave me to reduce the stress. I'm in an ambulance. I'm rushed up to Chapel Hill. And amazingly, I get to Chapel Hill, and the two nurses that are initially caring for me in the ICU, I kid you not, their names are Faith and Grace.
Oh my
God.
God.
It's just like, well, you two were built for this, weren't you?
You're in good hands.
Yeah, exactly. And they diagnosed me with acute promyelocytic leukemia, which basically it like kills you in 5 days or you've got a good shot.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm actually lucky that I came down with the fever and had an infection because it let them know that it was there soon enough. And, you know, once I got into more of the chemo stuff and I'm sitting around in like those, I don't know if you've seen these, but it's like you're in all these chairs in a big open space and you're all getting your drug infusions. I'm sitting in there and everybody's like swapping cancer stories and they'd hear what I have. Like, oh, you got the good cancer. It's like, yeah. It's like I'm like a poser in the cancer world. But
I've never heard such a term, the good cancer.
Man, only that is a dark humor. I mean, it's just a well of it. Like everybody in there.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
because you're kind of experiencing like all the benefits of community, but it's built around like this really unfortunate struggle.
Yeah.
So like you meet some cool people, but also some heartbreaking stories. You know, all of a sudden like somebody's not coming in anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, they've been moved back to intensive care, and so it's tough. But 33 days in the hospital, they treated me with a thing called arsenic trioxide. And I'll spend just a very brief moment on this because I think it's fascinating and something for people to consider. They started doing experiments on arsenic trioxide, which arsenic is the active ingredient in rat poison, and it causes cardiac arrest. They started experimenting with that as a way to kill some cancer cells and like really kill off bad white blood cells so your body can reboot itself. Back in the late 80s in China. And only through like a ton of fundraising and donation and research from like people who are interested in this field, by the time they got around to the early 2000s, they were running clinical trials in America. I met a woman who was part of the initial clinical trials. The medicine gave her 3 heart attacks. She had to be treated for 2 years, but she survived.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, okay, we're on to something here. It works. And by the time I come around in 2016-17, the drug is a lot sharper. I'm young and like, you know, mostly healthy. And so it worked really well for me. Like knocked the stuff out, 10 months of chemo. And it's just incredible that many people coming together for something that, for the most part, you never see any personal benefit, right? It's all for other people, the donations, the nurses putting in tons of hours, and helping strangers they've never met.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm alive, but not just me. I had 2 kids afterwards. Both my children are cancer survivors.
Really?
Right? It's just like, and that's, I think a lot of times when we get hit up by these charities, and I do a cancer fundraiser every year, a 24-hour row-a-thon. I think it's easy to be like, oh, here's one more thing. But just like I think running is an incredible practice because your body needs it, and like, this physical shell, the machine that allows us to do everything else, it's hugely important to take care of it. I think that like having a practice of charity and kindness towards others, whatever that may be, it doesn't need to be cancer. It's just find a way to help people. I think that is equally good for, the endurance of, your soul, or whatever the thing is that makes you feel like,
yeah,
I am a helpful member of this species.
Yeah.
So I think I got a lot of lessons out of that time. And some pitfalls too. That's really when like my alcohol addiction got the worst.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of stories I hear is like people get cancer and they beat it, and then they're like, they have this newfound love.
Zest for life.
Yeah. And then I was so surprised to hear like that actually came after, like the alcohol addiction came after leukemia.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people with an addiction, you experience this, which is like, you started it because it serves you for a purpose, and I had a lot of fun drinking like most people do when they start, and like it became like a common aspect of how I entertain myself in life. But like a lot of entertainment, it's also a barrier to self-realization. And so once I was going through chemo, I couldn't do much of anything. I'm like sitting around. I'm just like, I'm getting tanked like every day. And I wasn't able to curb it. I tried a couple times. Like I would try to put it away, and then like, not to get into the details of like how an addiction-addled mind tricks itself, but it just kept happening to me. And I was trying to burn the candle at both ends. And I think using that boat analogy, there was a period in my life after cancer where I was drinking hard, running hard, trying to just do everything. I wanted like this broad, I don't know, appeal to life. Like I can have it all. And that's just not, you can't be sprinting all the time. You just can't do it. It's not sustainable. And I ran into what is the like life version of the injury for going too hard. So I had a DUI, and my wife draws basically a hard line in the ground. At that point, I think we were married for 6 months.
Oh, wow. So
not what you sign up for,
So it was that soon after?
Yeah. So I was done with my chemo in September of 2017. I ran my first half marathon in June of 18 and picked up my DUI in August.
Dang.
And so I went to rehab for 30 days. And let me say to anybody, if you have an obvious problem in your life, something that you've been struggling with, and you can give yourself the gift of a 30-day, I'm going to do nothing but focus on this weakness, it's life-changing. Life-changing. It doesn't matter what that thing is. Like, get yourself surrounded by like some coaches, some people that know what they're doing. And on the other side of that thing, you will be imbued with like tools and perspective that make that challenge so much smaller than it once was. So I'm getting out of that. My wife calls me about 5 days before. I didn't even know she was pregnant, to tell me that she miscarried.
Oh, gosh.
And it's like, you sure you're ready to come home? Like, this is a lot of sorrow to take in. Like, anybody who's been through a miscarriage, like, it is devastating. And I was kind of sick of rehab, so I was like, I'm good. I don't know if I was good. But somewhat miraculous thing in my eyes, my wife picks me up like 5 days later. She'd been to the gynecologist that morning. And I tell people this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Eye of the beholder. I'll never forget the moment. She gets me into the car, so happy you're coming home. And then she shows me the sonogram strip of my son. It's the first time I've ever seen him. And everything's okay. It's healthy. We're good. And you don't need to believe in God or anything to like take that moment as a very obvious sign. I had a football coach. He said, throughout your life, you're going to face some prosperity and you're going to face some adversity. And it's how you handle the adversity that will define you as a man. And it's like, okay, last couple of years, we've had a shit ton of adversity here. But this is an obvious turning point. I got an opportunity. And that's some of the winds and waters I'm talking about. Can you recognize them when they're blowing? Can you hoist your sail to them and like ride it? And, because I'd been doing the work over that last month, it was so clear. And that is also the time, I think within 2 weeks, I had signed up for the Chicago Marathon. And I didn't really know why. I could just feel it. I had a sense, like, if I can do this, in my mind at that time, like a marathon is like impossible, can't be done. But if I could, well, then I'd prove something to myself about being able to commit and follow through and accomplish. And I'd be the person I needed to be for everything that was coming in life. And that's how I got into running.
Oh, dude,
that's it.
That's a heck of an origin story, man.
It's the one I got.
Dude.
Right.
You said earlier, like, how unique is anybody's perspective, really, or something along those lines.
Yeah. All other stuff.
It's like, I think, like, true uniqueness and originality is like, I mean, really non-existent. Mm-hmm. But it's just like we all have this, like, experience, this experience of life.
Yeah.
That I don't know how to explain it. Like, I don't know.
Well, try something on here. I think life is like a room, and everybody has a keyhole perspective into what's inside that room. It's a hugely interesting room. It's got lots of stuff in there, but depending on the angle you're coming from, you can only get a piece of the puzzle. And so by absorbing other people's stories through audiobooks, podcasts, that was one of the main things I loved about running was I don't know if you've heard of an app called Libby.
Mm-mm.
It basically allows you to just like get audiobooks for free. It's a run through your library subscription.
Oh, okay.
So I had an audible.com subscription, a Libby subscription, and I had at the time Apple Podcast. I'm a Spotify guy now. But
Spotify's great.
Oh, I love it. Love it. And I just listened to everything I could over the next couple of years of running and just tried to infuse myself with fresh perspective. And I felt like over the last few years, I understand more and more of what's inside that room called life. And it's less surprising to me now. I know how to navigate it so much better than I once did. And it's given me an appreciation for other people because we all kind of had the same keyhole. I mean, people's ability to articulate their vision is different. But if you can appreciate their experience, you can learn as much from that homeless person you pass on the street, which, if any homeless people are listening, I will give money to anyone who ever asks. It's a policy of mine. And as much as you can from like some of the business leaders, and we're all just people. Like I said, we're the same thing. We vary in degree, but like we all have had this experience, and there's no substitute for that. And so I've been the person who passed out on the street, and now like I'm not going to say a lot, but there are people who look up to the thing I've built with my life. And is the same guy on both ends.
Yeah.
So I try to value other people's perspective, and it's part of the reason I want to share mine is, the title of this book is An Amateur's Companion. Life is an amateur event. And I'm not a guide. I'm just another person who's hearing the shit with you. And I think if we can all see each other that way, like a lot of the things we get kind of like stressed out or nitpicky about, like it's not that big a deal. I mean, most of us aren't curing cancer, right? So I don't know. My experiences have just given me a lot more peace of mind. And I hope that, people who are feeling rattled, that when they hear a story like this, as I've been served by hearing other people's stories, they'll realize it's okay. You can take it one day at a time. You can build a plan. You can be consistent, and you can reclaim the person you wish to be.
Dude, I love that, man. I love your perspective and outlook on everything. It's so like positive, and again, I feel like it's all rooted in this like humility because, like you said, you've been humbled. But I think it's just so easy for somebody to face adversity, and then they just have the like woe is me mentality, and they just want everybody to feel bad for them. But I can tell, and I know that like you have the opposite, where like life throws some shit at you, and you're like, all right, how are we gonna navigate this shit? Basically, yeah. It's like I really like that analogy you brought up a few times of like you're on the ocean and you just have these ebbs and flows, and you can't force things too much, and you have to just like accept it and embrace it. Basically, I really like that idea because it's like I always think, I tell this to myself constantly, is like if you can't let yourself get too high sometimes, because like if everything's going good, like your work is good, your relationships are good, your friends, social life, everything's just crushing. Don't like get too used to that, because inevitably life is gonna have a downhill at some point. You're gonna come down.
Yeah.
And then same thing when you're down and like everything just seems like it's going wrong. Your car breaks down, your spouse is mad at you, your kids are mad at you, whatever it is. Like you have to know, okay, the sun's gonna come up tomorrow. It's gonna like bring us up the hill again at some point. So I don't know. I think just embracing that, and it's like the Buddhist, it's like life is suffering, just acknowledging and embracing that shit's gonna happen.
Well, you shared this on it was your 40-mile back-to-back 20-mile training days recently on YouTube, and you talked about intentional adversity and
voluntary adversity.
Adversity,
same thing.
Yeah, but man, that is an absolutely fantastic thing to know and to discover and to implement. And I think that, my favorite running book of all time is what I talk about when I talk about running. Haruki Murakami, Japanese novelist who also happens to just run like a couple marathons a year, right? And it's one of these people who is especially gifted at describing what he sees through the keyhole. And he talks about what is a pretty common saying at this point, which is, pain is unavoidable, suffering is optional. And
I don't know if I've heard that actually.
Yeah, the suffering is optional. And when I first heard that, Murakami's like, I think about that all the time. And then I heard about it when he said it. Now I think about it all the time.
Oh, that's good.
And I originally thought what he was saying was that you can choose to not feel the suffering. And now that I have a little bit more experience, I think the opposite is true. I think what you were saying, the voluntary adversity, it is, I'll suffer. Raise your hand. Yeah, I'll suffer. I'm here for this. And choose the suffering. It's optional. You don't have to. But the suffering you're willing to choose is actually the thing that's going to shape you. Like my coach said, the adversity is what will define you as a man.
Yeah.
And so sign up for the adversity, invite it into your life, just like that Rumi poem. It all brings gifts. And and I think that's why like every runner on the planet, right? Oh, I hate running. I hate it. I would never run. And then like you're running marathons.
Yep.
And it was to me the most obvious thing I could choose. This is super hard. I'll do it. And I have seen that pay so many benefits in doing other things that way, Like even now, if I have a social outing or like I'm doing something with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, it's like, I don't really know these people. I don't want to go to this thing. Just go. Go for an hour. See how it goes. And every time I'm coming home and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad we went.
Yep.
That was just awesome. And it is steeling yourself for the dynamism of life. You build all this capacity. You build it in your body, you build it in your heart, and then whatever life brings to you, whatever adversity. I was just in the hospital for 6 nights. I got checked out 8 days ago, last Monday.
I saw that. What can you say what that was?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just an oddball thing. I have an adrenal insufficiency. It's like an autoimmune disease. My body no longer produces cortisol.
Wow.
Correctly.
That's the like stress hormone, right?
Yep, which is probably why I'm so positive.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't feel any difference as far as like mood and everything, or at least I didn't think I could. But starting about last June, my VO2 max was hanging around like 61.
That's great.
And I'd worked on that, man. I was like I was proud of it. I built this capacity for life. And I just watched it trickle, and I was trying to run distances and it just wasn't happening. And I was just like, it'll turn. I'll figure this out. Like I started doing some blood work, didn't do the right panels. And then finally my body just completely crashed on me a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
I thought I had the flu. I woke up at night and literally wasn't able to move my body. It took me like 5 minutes of like flailing to roll around so like blood flowed correctly and I could stand up.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I was super scared. Went to the doctor. They ran like, I don't know, 8 different blood draws. Like they just kept taking vials. And they saw that my potassium was like at a 8.4, which most doctors will tell you I should have been in full-on cardiac arrest. But I think all the training, like my heart could handle the throughput.
Yeah. Wow.
And so
is that a high or low potassium?
Oh, massively high.
Okay.
Like it's almost double. Well, it is double what you want to be at. 4
wow.
is like
Okay.
the right in the middle of the recommended range.
Okay.
And I don't know what
Jeez.
that, it's like 4 like milligrams per whatever,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
it's a 4.
Okay.
And so they get all my levels back down. They run a bunch of tests, and like this is what it is. And so now I'm one of these people who takes a pill a day. Like I got my little pill box. I like make sure I hit it at the right times.
Jeez.
And as long as, and man, this week, my only goal right now is building 30 days of consistent exercise and like get to know my body again, lifting, running, doing some Peloton, doing some rowing, like anything that just gets me moving. And then once I have 30 days and it's like, okay, I'm back a little bit, then I'll get back into training and decide like, what is it that, because I like having a goal. Just if you're going to do the exercise, also set a goal. It's a relationship with the person you want to become. Yeah. Right. So just get one out there.
I like that. Dude, you got all these like little nuggets of wisdom in here. I love it.
Well,
that's how the book was, man. It's like every like paragraph, there's like this little nugget. I was like, dang, why did I never think of it that way?
Well, I appreciate that. I'll say this about writing. Similar to how I'd recommend running, like writing for me is the best tool I currently have for maximizing my human potential. And the reason is, look, I don't know the science behind this, but they say like our pace of thinking is roughly like 1,000 words per minute. It basically just means like you have so much going through your head in the form of thought that you can't relay it that quickly. We speak at a rate of about 100, 120 words per minute. And I tell people like that is the benefit of therapy. Like I've done hundreds of hours of group therapy, AA, and one-on-one. I like group the best. But if you can sit down and articulate your feelings to somebody else, you will find that like that crunches down all that noise in your head, that 1,000 words to 1/10 of the size. And it's much more easy to have a handle on. Now, the magic of writing is even when I'm humming, even when my fingers are flying on the keyboard, I can't go much faster than like 20 words per minute. It is the most precise I can be with my thoughts. It slows all of it down and it lets me really nail it. It's the best version of me I can like hone stuff down to. And once I've written through a topic, I've like, now it is tiny. I've got it. And I can hold so much more the more I write. And so it's really helped me develop my thinking and make sure that I have a handle on what are otherwise some complex ideas. And I think it's an incredible practice for anyone to pick up. And a lot of people do a great job with like, morning pages, journaling, just finding a way to like, how do I narrow the field of my vision?
Yeah.
And so that's what it's done for me.
Dude, that's a again, you've got all these great little nuggets. I've never thought about writing that way, but it's so true. Like I try to journal every morning. I take like 10 minutes, just like write out my thoughts for the day.
Hey, 10 minutes a day is powerful.
And it helps so much.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like like you said, it helps to like get those thoughts out to the world if you're talking to somebody or putting it on paper or something. But it's like, you always have some kind of thing like nagging at you, I feel like. And if you're able to just get it out, put it on paper, it's like out. It's like you get it out of your system.
100%.
Have you always been into writing, or like what sparked the idea for the book, I guess? And like I'll let you take that.
No, it's it's funny. Jackson Mitchell asked me, so like, when did I get into, or when did I know I was like a decent writer? Which took me a while to like say, right? It's like, I heard you being very, very humble in your conversation with Pete Rubish.
Dude, I love Pete.
Dude, looking at your deadlift programming, and like, first of all, obviously he's a tank, right? Like, so strong. I was like, I got to get in touch with that guy. Like, I need his programming. Like,
have you reached out to him?
I haven't yet.
Dude,
but
I can connect you guys.
That would be awesome.
He's
man.
so cool.
I would just love, like Pete, give me, what's it cost, man? Give me the program. I promise I'll hit it hard.
I think we're actually going to put together like a Jeremy and Pete like collab kind of program.
Sign me up.
Where he does the like deadlift programming and I'll do like the running portion.
Yeah.
But he's like obsessed with running now. It's really cool.
That is cool. And it's really cool to see a guy with his background like get it so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, make me patient zero. I'm on board for that.
Heck yeah. Anyways, go back to.
Yeah. So he was asking like, when did I connect to that? And it's similar like how Pete considered you an elite runner and you're like, I'm not elite.
Yeah.
Because like now that you're in the world, you know elite runners. And I guess for me, it's like, yeah, I got a lot of praise when I was a kid, writing little essays and, always good papers compared to my peers in high school. But what happened was once I started reading like real literature and understanding the landscape of what elite writing looked like, and it didn't happen all the time at first, but every now and then, like I'd turn out a paragraph and I'd be like, this, like I recognize this, like this is something. I think the first time I felt like I had something truly elite, I write about a 5,000 word letter to my son every day on his birthday. Every day on his birthday, what does that mean? Every time it's his birthday. So I have 5 of them currently, and we'll write a 6th one for his 5th birthday coming up.
That's awesome.
I do the same thing for my daughter. And it's because I want them to know me, and I want them to know, like, see my development over time. Like it's a snapshot, but it's also stories of their life, and so they can tell that I was there, I observed.
Did your parents do this, or where'd you get this idea?
I don't know that I got it from anyone. I just thought it was a good idea.
Dude, that's so cool. That's going to be such a cool thing for them to have to look back on.
I hope so. And the cool thing about it is, like, if you get to 18 years, you got about 90,000 words. Like that's a solid book, man. Yeah. And it's going to be all about their life and like their father's care for them.
Do you know how many words your book is?
This one is about 50. You know what? It's got it right on the back. 52,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I mean, 2 books if you look at it that way.
Exactly, man.
That's incredible.
So I wrote something about what it's like to have a child on his, when he was born. And the basic premise of it was, when you don't have kids, it's like maybe the idea of kids is like, yeah, I want kids someday. But I compared it to like, you've lived your entire life indoors and you have friends that have been outside and they come back in and they tell you how awesome it is. They talk about things like wind, but it's like, I don't know, I feel some air conditioning. And they talk about things like the sunrise. Like, we got lights. Like, what's the big deal? Like, it just seems like a hassle. It's like cold and then you meet somebody and they kind of are interested in going outside and you're like, okay, yeah, I could get into it. And you go outside finally and you get blasted by like a chilly wind and you see your first sunset as the sky turns a cascade of colors and you're like, what was I missing? And it feels like the first day of your life because you realize that the world is so much richer than you could have ever comprehended. And I wrote that in a paragraph that was just like really well put together. And I knew it when I had it. I was like, this nails it. Anybody can understand the difference between the glory of the outdoors and the like simulated life in the house. And that's what it is to have a kid. And I knew then that I was like, I will appreciate this experience of being a father and my time on this earth if I take the focused vision of writing and I spend real dedicated time to every year of their life. And yeah, it sounds like I'm putting together a future gift for them, but it's a gift I'm giving myself to really embrace all the time that goes by. And like, that's what writing is for me. And when we talk about never retiring, man, I hope I die face down on a typewriter, whatever we're using at that time, like whatever thought machine is putting my words down. Like, I hope I die face down, like trying to really focus on like the real, I don't know, that interface that my experience is, and just like truly trying to like hold on to it and appreciate it. And always when I get some good writing time in, I always feel like this wellspring of curiosity and gratitude that comes from the moment, because like that's what it does for me. So,
dude, I love nothing more than like when somebody finds that thing that they're passionate about and they can like do it. And I guess the only thing I love more than that is when they take that thing and they can just make it their full-time thing. Like we talked about the thirds of life.
Yep.
When you can combine the time that you have to yourself with like that work aspect and you can make those one and the same. Like I think that above like running and fitness and content, that's like the thing I love the most.
Yeah,
being able to help people, or not being able to help it. If I can help, that's even better. But see people find their passion and then pursue it and like just get obsessed with it. I love that so much.
Well, you know what it is? I think the guy's name is Howard Thurman. Last name Thurman.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he has a quote you've probably heard. It's don't ask what the world needs from you. Ask what makes you come alive and do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
Yeah.
And that's true, man. Like it's why people follow you. It's why like for all the craziness, like it's why a David Goggins, like there's a lot that's messed up about that guy's mindset, right? But like people love it because like this guy is like, it's like somebody poured gasoline on him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If you can, I was trying to articulate it earlier that like, I think I've unintentionally said that there is no uniqueness, but what I kind of meant by that was like, we're just like these culminations of our experiences from like these other ideas and things that, we see and feel. That's what makes us unique, is like our experiences. And when I think everybody should approach life like, oh, I have this unique experience. Like I talk to people all the time that want to get into content or create social media stuff. And they're like, I don't have a unique approach, or I don't have like a thing I can talk about. And I'm like, everybody has, like, your life is your niche. Like you have this unique culmination of experiences that is you. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know whether or not you have like a specific skill or thing, whatever you think you have or don't have, like I think there's something that everybody can contribute and be that like member of society that is providing value in some way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I think there's something interesting about social media and like this time being alive. Like, I was in college when Facebook became a thing. Like I remember my friend, I it was only for colleges at the time.
Yeah.
And my friend who went to Kansas State emailed me, like we were using email. He didn't even text. He emailed me to tell me about this thing, the Facebook. And I couldn't get it yet because my school was too small. They didn't recognize my like school email address.
Yeah, you had to have like a .edu, right?
Yeah. And so we have seen like social media like come into existence. And it mostly gets, I feel like, a pretty negative rap. It's like because people have this relationship where it like drains their life, doom scrolling.
Yep.
Right. I did a thing a couple years back where I wanted to be really intentional about getting my screen time down. My average was 4.5 hours a day. So I just tracked it. You know, what you measure, you'll manage. And so I just tracked it every single day. And by the end of the year, my average for the entire year was 2 hours and 15 minutes a day. The difference in that time over the course of the year is 22 full days.
Holy shit. Knocking it down by basically 2 hours a day.
Yes.
Dude.
It's like I gave myself all that time back.
That's incredible.
So it helped me redefine like, okay, well, what is this thing to me? And so I don't have a large social media following whatsoever. Like I started mimicking some of the content creation that you and Matt Choi would do. And, you know, I'd have a couple reels that would hit like 60K views. And I was like, oh, something's happening here. But to an earlier point, content creation is hard. It takes a lot of work. Like it's just time, you know? Yeah. And I felt like my time, like what is my unique thing? And it may not be as instantly gratifying, but it's writing. It's not. And so I like doing the other thing. And the reason I still like putting content onto social media and sharing is even if it is a smaller audience, what I hope that everybody around me sees is that, you know, Instagram, for example, it is an opportunity to share yourself with others. And in doing that, even if it's drops in a bucket, you have an impact on what they think is possible because, like, hey, you're just a guy, but so are they. And they can slowly work towards maybe a better version of themselves if they see any of it in you. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with like curating what you are. Try to be authentic. Try to be the person that you put out there in the world, but also try to be a slightly better version of yourself. And hopefully in time, like you live up to the expectations you're putting out there in the world.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it.
And yeah I mean, like you do run the risk of like a hint of hypocrisy, like, but you know, we're all hypocrites in some way. Right. And if you can, you know, try to shorten that gap as much as possible and be the person you proclaim to be, I think social media is actually an incredible tool for us all to live a little bit more aspirationally.
Yeah. I think social media does a great job too to like hold you accountable for things.
It does for me.
Like if you put out some goal you're trying to achieve on social media, and not that any of those people actually care whether or not you do it, but
you think they do. It's like you tricked yourself, like everybody's watching me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that I think is one of the most powerful accountability tools is putting it something. I think there's like actually studies they've done on that, like psychologically, of telling other people outwardly what your goals are. Like you're more likely, I think, to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, when I was training for the Disney Marathon, which is the one I focus on in the book, I would, every Monday morning, I would post my entire week's training plan that day. And then either through story or post, I would share like that I did it. Yeah. Or was I a little short? And to your point, did anyone care? A few people did, but like, come on, it's just me. But it felt like I had somebody watching me.
Right.
You know, a big thing, like growing up, I was raised in a very Christian home, and a big thing my mom always talked about was like integrity and, you know, working for an audience of one, in this case, like God, or like, you know, if you're not, you know, built towards faith, like an ideal, work towards an ideal and know that it's looking at you. And like, I don't think in practice it's that much different.
Yeah.
I said I'm going to do it. Now I have to do it. And once you've done it, it becomes part of you. So I think not being afraid of that and, open yourself up to a little bit of judgment, a little bit of criticism. I think the people who can harness social media correctly, like, have an incredible tool to, like, optimize their life.
100%.
So,
Dude, let's go back to running a little bit.
hey, I'm all about it.
So, you ran your first half marathon. Was that while you were doing chemo?
So I was about 6 months off chemo.
Okay. How did that first half marathon go? What was the inspiration to do that one, I guess?
Well, I know this for a fact. We feel things before we know 'em. And I was just trying to, like, get back in shape. I wanted to be strong again. And at the time, I didn't have a home gym. It was tough for me to get to a gym every day. I was like, well, running, I can do this. And I could feel that, like, it was hard and difficult and I didn't want to. And so, like, I needed to. And coming off of chemo, I was like 260 pounds. It's just not great. I also just wanted to be not fat.
That's a good enough reason.
There was a little bit of vanity involved. So I started trying to drop pounds, and my older brother lived in San Diego at the time, and he told me he'd run it with me. And so that was enough to, like, I've always looked up to my older brother. He's a 2-time rugby All-American, always just like the toughest dude and always in great shape. He's one of these guys who, like, even when he wasn't training, could roll out of bed and run a marathon.
Dang.
And
must be nice.
Yeah, right. And so he gave me, like, he's enough like me that I was like, look, I can be like this. So, kind of under his influence, I was like, yeah, I'll fly out to this. I'll sign up for it. Also helping me get there, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society has a thing called Team in Training. And if you raise money for that, which I was wanting to do, I was wanting to give back, then you get, like, access to races and they'll give you a hotel room. So I raised enough money that they put us up in the Omni, like, right by the starting line. So it was a great setup. It's also how I ran the Chicago Marathon, was donating to that.
Nice.
So
that's one of the coolest things about marathons is the charity aspect.
It's unbelievable, man. When the further you dig into, like, the culture around racing, it's so incredibly altruistic. Because, look, even great runners are finishing like 5,000th, you know? So it's just, everybody is there for mostly a pure cause. I don't want to overhype the goodness of the human spirit, but it's pretty solid. I've always been impressed by people who get into it. So I decided to run it, and I set just like a 2-hour time goal because, I don't know, it's a big round number. Let's do it. And I ran it like a total asshole. I come out, and it's my first organized race ever. I think I ran a 5K before that. But it's big. It's the San Diego. It's like it's beautiful weather out, and I'm still kind of in this zest for life phase. And so the race starts, and I just take off. I'm like, my first mile is like a 7:20.
Oh god!
And keep in mind, like, I've been running for like 6 months, and I was never fast to begin with. And the second mile is like 7:50, and of course you just see it tail. And by the time I get to mile, it's somewhere around like 10 or 11. My phone rings. I look at it's my older brother. I'm just like, no, fuck this guy. And I can't answer it. I can't do anything. I'm just like, I'm in a torture chamber. I just got to finish this race. And like, so I hit ignore, and he just pulls up into my peripheral. He's like, ignore? And so, like, mock hurt. And he didn't let me shut it down. Like, I would have walked, but I care enough about his opinion of me, and like, he was always the toughest guy I knew, and you don't want the toughest guy you know to think that you're not a tough guy.
Of course. And
so I just grinded out those last 2 miles, and as I got to the end of the San Diego half, is the rock and roll. I don't know if they keep the same course, but you go through like 5 like 0.1 mile turns to finish, and you can't see the finish line. You're downtown, it's tucked behind buildings, and so you feel like I'm almost there, and it just isn't coming around any turn. And so Joe, my brother, had run to the corner, And he was just like yelling at me from the corner. He's like, "Come on, Dust, let's go. It's right here. It's right here." And then it wouldn't be there. He's like, "No, it's the next one." And so he and his wife's friend too, they do that at each corner and wave me in. And I passed the finish line at 1:59:57.
Oh my gosh.
Just snuck through. And, a month later after that, I had the DUI and, had to like reboot life. But I don't know if it works out the same way for me if he doesn't wave me in and I did it, like that sense of accomplishment. Like,
yeah.
I've never felt worse after a race. I was horribly undertrained. I felt terrible. Like, me and my wife had a trip to Hawaii scheduled from there, and we went. And like the first 3 days, I'm like limping over the trails. But it planted a seed of like, okay, I'm not terrible at this. Like, I could be okay.
Dude, to suffer your way through a sub 2.5 is not bad at all.
It was enough to get me into it.
That's great, man. And then Chicago was your first marathon, right?
Yeah.
How long after the half was Chicago?
About 15 months.
Okay.
Because I went into rehab and basically rebooted my life. And, I just knew, like, because Team and Training had it and, like, Chicago was, what an incredible first marathon experience. I just watched, your video like a month ago on your 244. Is it 244?
Yeah.
And, you were saying something about the expo, right? It's like, I walked into that and that was like, I was at the San Diego half, but this is like basically my first race expo ever there in Chicago, second one. And I was just like, holy cow, this is running?
Dude, the majors are crazy.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a whole production. It's so cool though. Like, it adds to the experience, I think.
Yeah. And so I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't discovered anything in the way of like your content. This 2019, anybody else really. I basically just like tried to run more and more miles. I think like my high mileage week was like 38 miles. I didn't know, just try it.
Right.
And I was like, well, I ran 38 miles in a week. I just compress it. And all I'm doing is drinking water. Like, no idea about sodium whatsoever. Yeah. My body breaks down around mile 18. And again, I just suffer through it. Just cramping all the way through to the finish line. I finish in like 4:20 something.
Dude, the way you described that cramp in the book was so good. I've never been able to...
The frozen butter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what, just for people that don't know, what, like, can you revisit that analogy?
Yeah, so, like, I say in the book, like, it starts out as like a little whoopsie, right? You feel a little pulsing, like, oh, something's happened back here. And eventually, like, the thing seizes up on you. And, like, I know bad cramps because I played college basketball. And you get done with a college basketball game, and then, like, you and your buddies go out, and you're up till, like, 4 a.m. You're drinking 15 plus beers. You're already dehydrated, then you're going further down the dehydration path. And it's like if you took butter, put it in the freezer, and you pull it out and you try to stretch it like William Wallace in Braveheart. It's like that thing is not going to do anything for you. And it is just pure pain, dude. It feels like it's ripping off the bone.
Yep.
And so, like, I'm doing everything I can to not contract my muscles while I'm also trying to run a marathon. Like, the two things are incongruous. And I do that for 8 miles, and just, you watch your average pace on your watch just fall. And it's like, well, that 4-hour goal is not happening.
And you ran, it was 4:20 something there, right?
Yeah, I think it's like 4:24, if I recall.
Dude, again, so, I mean, that's for a big sufferfest. I mean, it's still like a pretty respectable first marathon.
I'm pretty strong up to like 15, 16 miles.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a common thing, right? It's like you get there and you're around that 15-mile mark and you're like, oh, I got this.
Oh, you have so much confidence at that point.
Yeah.
False confidence.
Yeah, and not to spoil the book, but I didn't make it in the Disney Marathon either. I run a 4:11 and it's the same experience. Like, I'm so strong up to a point and I'm just hitting my 8:45 paces, like, and it's clean and it's easy. And then all of a sudden the body betrays you. And so I've only run 3 marathons. I'm hoping to get another one in 24. We'll see how my body, feels after this recovery period. But I finally ran San Antonio, and I thought I was ready. I think you ran that half last year.
Was it the same year?
Yeah, San Antonio half.
Yeah.
You did
Yeah,
that?
I did that. Yeah, last December.
Yeah, I was running the full.
Oh, I didn't know you were out there for that.
It was, well, you didn't want to wait around for me, man. But me and my brother decided to run it together. And at this point, like, now I have been following you. I've been reading up with other runners. Like, I think I've solved the electrolyte issue. And excuse me. And still, I get to like mile 16 and I can start to feel it, the breakdown. Mm-hmm. And so I say, okay, at that time I had a little bit of a bulwark of time. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to run about 10-minute miles here for a couple of miles. I'm going to inject myself with every piece of salt and carb I have on me. And let's try to triage this thing. I take all that in. I kind of speed up. I end up at mile 20, and my average pace is spot on 9:09. I have eaten all my extra clock. So 9:09, for those who don't know, is the average pace you need to run a 4-hour marathon. And so here I am at mile 20, and I've got to run the next 6.2 at the same pace I ran the first 20, which is incredibly daunting. Do I have it left in me? And it's like, this is it. It's going to happen now, or it's going to be a failure. And I try to pace it. That next mile is about 9:11. Okay, a little faster. Next mile is about 9:08. Next mile after that has a massive hill. It slows me down to like 9:26. Going down that hill, I catch another cramp. And now I'm a few miles away. I tell myself, like, you got a 10 count here. Stop, stretch your legs. 10 seconds is all you get. I give myself the 10 count. At some point, I think I picked up a salt tab off the road, which I do not recommend. Like, I was in a desperate place.
Depends on which part of downtown you're in. I mean, that might not have been a salt pill.
No shots at San Antonio, but a little dicey.
Yeah.
And I'm down to the last mile of the race, and my watch says 9:11. And I'm trying to do the runner math, right? Okay, like what's 2 seconds? Like 26 miles, like about 40. If I can run this in 8 minutes, that takes off a minute, which is 2 seconds over 26. Okay, so I need to run an 8-minute mile, and I'll have it. And I'm like, I got one stiff leg, and I gave it all I had. I swear I did. My skin is like fire engine red. Like, my heart rate is like ticking the max as I'm coming across the finish line. And I blank out for a minute. I forget that I'm even like measuring my time. And by the time I look down at my watch, it says 4:01. I'm like, oh crap. I pull up the QR code, look at the finish time, 4 hours, 36 seconds.
Oh.
And it's a real test of you're like, no. Okay, so
that's tough.
So it's one of those things, man. It hasn't come to me easy, but I feel with each successive race that like I tap into something a little bit more, and I feel a little bit stronger and a little bit more self-assured. And the cool thing about it, this is like really my real pitch to people who are running. When you're running and like you're really at your max, you're really like, it strips away everything. Like for a brief period of time, there are only 2 real outcomes. Matt Fitzgerald, who's a great, very prolific running writer, wrote like 80/20 running, does a lot of personal stories, wrote a book called Iron War where he talks about this experience. In that time, there's really only 2 outcomes. There's the version of you that quits and the version of you that pushes through. And everything else seems to fade away except those 2 competing desires. And for whatever that time is that your body is teetering on the precipice of what it can do, you have to keep on choosing, like minute over minute, that I will be the person who persists. And when you finish, whether you achieved your goal or you failed, it takes a little while. Like the layers of who you were before kind of come back on, and you're who you were but slightly altered, and you can feel it. And you know you're something different. And that assurance it's tantamount to self-confidence and a self-esteem. And the people who have done that and done it repeatedly, you can feel it on them. You've met enough athletes now that you can tell, like, they know who they are and they're no longer daunted by the challenges of life.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that, I just told you, like 4-hour times, nobody who's like serious about running is going to be like impressed, but they know the pain you went through. And it's always just you trying to race against your old self, the person who helped you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do outperform the person you used to be, you can feel like both your past self and your future self congratulating you for where you're going. And I think building up that relationship with yourself is so helpful, and running is an incredibly effective way of building that relationship.
Yeah, I think it builds so much confidence in yourself. And like, I like that way of thinking about it, that you're a new person after a race, because you have like, you find a lot of self-awareness, I think, of like what you're capable of pushing yourself through. Because it's like 20 to 26 of a marathon, like you described it as like that constant fight or flight response being triggered over and over and over again, like every minute basically, or every second. And if you can push through that like nagging desire to stop, but you keep going forward, like that, I think it has, I'd love to like Huberman or somebody do some kind of neurological like study on that, of like how that rewires your brain, because our brains are plastic basically. You can mold them and change them, and I think that's what running does. Especially like, it doesn't even have to happen during a race. It can happen during a training run. Like if you have some 20-mile run you have to do and you're fighting yourself the whole time, you don't want to do that. Like you do enough of those over time, your brain starts to mold and change into this new person on the other end of it.
There's no question. I know I'm different. Like you've got to feel like a different person. Like every now and then you'll share like, when you were just like running 1 mile as fast as you could was your like training program.
Terrible strategy.
Like you've got to feel like a different person than what you were back then, right?
Yeah. I think running for me has taught me so much patience.
Yeah.
And that like fight or flight response gets triggered later and later and later in the distance of a run, because you learn how to adapt to that, I think.
Yeah.
And I think just patience more than anything. And that's like, have you ever been able to find anything that kind of simulates what running does? Like in terms of that, like kind of fight or flight, or like that, I guess that's the best way to put it, the fight or flight response.
There's a few things. I think that for me, and this is part of what I loved about it, a little bit of high school football. Like high school football is a constant collision with your own bravery, because it's a constant collision with other people who are big and strong as you are.
Yeah.
And the ability to show up and fight every day, it's like, it's a real choice, and it's difficult to do. So that was one for me. But nah, it's tough to recreate. I'm sure you can with like some of the real aggressive sports, like a jiu-jitsu. Like I've got a buddy who's a brown belt, and like really gives himself to it, wins always in these tournaments, always taking like first or second. And, I feel like he gets the same thing, because when you meet some of these people that are engaged in like a very difficult sport, like he's this way, you are almost always amazed by they're just calm. Mm-hmm. Like they always seem so steady and relaxed. And it kind of reminds me of Fight Club, where I think Edward Norton's on the voiceover, and he's like, once you've been in a fight, the volume gets turned down on everything else.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of ways to simulate that kind of intensity.
I feel like it has to be something physical. Maybe it doesn't have to be, but I think that's the easiest way to do it, is to put yourself in a physically difficult situation.
Well, I think that makes a ton of sense, because the physical aspect is what like makes you, and this is part of the reason I advocate for running. Like if somebody actually came to me and like seriously wanted my help in turning their life around, it's there's almost no question. Like I've had a lot of experience in feeling bad and getting better. And I think I buy them a pair of Nikes and say like, let's get you back on your feet. And the reason being, like, our body is an incredible teacher of our relationship with the world. Like, I don't think of my body as myself. I think maybe some of this is cancer, but like my body is like my dog. Like I love it. I got to get it out on a walk. I got to feed it properly. And in return, it'll do a lot for me. Like it'll love me back and it'll give me a lot of life. And so when you threaten it physically, like with fatigue and with danger, like it starts screaming at you. And you have to be a little bit of a parent. It's like, no, be calm. This is good for you. Stay here. Stay in this moment. And the routine of talking to your body that way, you create a relationship with yourself that when you are confronted with moments that simulate the fight or flight, like it can be, a boss coming down on you or like a big presentation you have to give, and you've got that knee-jerk reaction like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. Be calm. Stay in this moment. This is good for you. And it takes repetition, and it's hard to do. It is hard to find enough emotional situations that aren't like in danger of sabotaging you.
Right.
But like running is actually like a comparatively, it's similar to like practicing like a combat sport or wrestling or like, maybe sparring could get you there. But like it is actually a very safe way to engage with like danger. And so I think that's some of the mindset that's unique to endurance running. It's not necessarily about being fast. It's about being dog shit tired and taking the next step anyway.
Yeah. Do you ever cold plunge or ice bath?
Dude, I was just talking to my brother about this. I don't. I was like, the cold shower is difficult.
Yeah.
But I think that what has held me back is just the initial investment for something that I'm not sure, like, would you do this? Right. And he was talking to me about it. He's like, well, yeah, I tried to simulate with cold showers and I hated it. And I was like, maybe it's all just overhyped.
I think the point I was trying to make or when I asked that earlier is like the only thing for me I've really been able to find that simulates that like fight or flight response you feel at the end of a marathon is the cold plunge.
Yeah.
And there's like recovery benefits and stuff like physically, but like I think it's the mental benefits is the reason I do it, because it almost feels like you fast forward the first 20 miles of a marathon and you get just that like 20 to 26, that wherever your mind goes, that's what I feel when I get into a cold plunge. So I do as much as I can because of that.
Well, I want to do it. Like honestly, like whenever
I got one downstairs and go do it right now.
I'll strip down, get in. Actually, nah, I'm not gonna do it. I just like trying to explain to my brother showing up holding my underwear on my head.
I'll give you some of my clothes.
Get some trunks. It's tempting. What's the initial investment on the cold plunge?
I mean, if you get like the actual plunge, I think they're like 4,000 or 5,000.
Okay.
But there's like cheaper alternatives, like the ice barrel is like
and you'd 100% be like, this is worth it.
I think so. Yeah. Like even Bree, she doesn't do a ton of like physical like exercise or anything, but she'll get in the cold plunge a few times a week, and she's like, it helps my mentality so much because it like, I think if you have any kind of anxiety or anything that's like nagging at you, it like lets you get that out. It's like the same thing as exercise.
Yeah.
I think it gives you that same kind of mental response that running would give you.
Well, my instinct says it's just the right thing to do because, you and other people that I enjoy following, like they speak so highly of it. And I think I subscribe to enough of the same life philosophies that's like, yeah, dude, you're going to get the benefit.
I'm not sponsored or anything, but I just truly like, I love it. And I know it definitely seems like one of those things that's a gimmick of like, does it really do anything? Or is it just like a social media thing?
Yeah.
But
people love talking about the cold plunge.
Dude, if you get in that thing, your mind will change real quick.
Okay.
One chapter in the book is titled, or correct me if I'm wrong, but no one wants to run a marathon.
Oh yeah, that's it.
What is the meaning behind that? And you really go into it in depth in the book, but I really like that chapter.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's just me talking about the natural resistance we feel to challenging ourselves. Look, we all live in boundaries of our own estimation. And you either live up or down to those expectations, like what you believe about yourself. And I don't know anybody who wasn't running before that hears about, like, do you want to go on the longest, most difficult run of your life? And is like, wow, that sounds exciting, right? It's like you've had to build up the musculature, the routine to like not be afraid of this thing that is going to tell you that you probably are less than you have estimated yourself to be. Like, and so it's one of those things that I wanted to start out that way, because committing to 20 weeks of training is more about accepting your weaknesses than believing in your strength. And if you can give yourself grace all along the way, you're going to have so many bad runs from week 1 to week 20 or however long your training program is, and to be okay with it and to forgive your body its shortcomings and say like, hey, we had a bad day. That's okay. Let's show up again tomorrow. And if you can have that grace and just repeatedly show up and forget about the fact that like you don't want to do it. The suffering is optional. Choose it anyway. And if you do, it'll cease to become suffering. One of my favorite philosophical perspectives on life is from Albert Camus. And he said, you have to imagine Sisyphus happy. And so Sisyphus is the god who stole fire, or the king who stole fire from the gods and was like forever tasked with rolling the boulder up a hill. Mm-hmm. But what if Sisyphus loves rolling the boulder up the hill? It's like, this is freaking awesome. I love my life. If you can just like take that one simple mindset, like, I don't want to do this, and be like, yeah, I want to do it. And you make that choice, it flips your options on their head. It's like, now I'm a person who can do what is required. And because of that, every challenge that shows up in my path, yeah, I can just decide to do it. It's like Will Smith tells a story about going up on stage when he was first starting his career. And he was always nervous. And he was talking to a guy. He's like, I don't want to go up. It's just like, I have all these butterflies. And he's like, I'm just scared. The guy's like, yeah, I got an idea. Just do it scared. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, you're scared, but just do it scared. It'll be cool. And it's like, yeah, stop trying to not be scared. Stop trying to care about like what you want. Just like, what's the thing? Do the thing and watch it change your life. And so I put that in there as like, a week 0 before you get into the training. Like, let's wrap our heads around this mindset about what we're getting into, and it's all okay. You don't need to impress anybody. You don't need to like light the world on fire. You just need to show up every day, and it'll be awesome.
Did you have a lot of days where you're like, man, I don't want to go do this? How did you combat that? Like, I guess, was it that mindset basically, or did you have any kind of like tactical things you would do with yourself?
There's the Instagram thing we talked about. I put it out there ahead of time. Tell on yourself. Like, this is what I'm doing. You have broadcast it to the world. So a little bit of accountability. You want to hopefully develop a partner. Like, I described that life in a boat. So much easier if somebody else gets in the boat with you. So my wife is a great partner in like describing my goals and my aspirations. And she never makes me feel small or silly, even when it is small and silly. She always embraces the journey with me. And there's a lot of times when like I just need to tell somebody I don't want to do it. And so having somebody you can talk to, and this is an AA thing too, it's why you have sponsors. So find a buddy. A coach is obviously the very best person you could have. And call that person and be like, I don't want to run today. And you'd be amazed what talking about not wanting to run does for wanting to run. So those were the first 2 things. The other is especially early on, and maybe this did hurt my performance, but if I had like a speed day and I'm sore and I feel awful, okay, I was supposed to run some intervals here. Let's make them easy miles. And don't beat yourself up too much. Yeah. I mean, there's people who are hell-bent on their performance, and I admire them so much. And if you can do it to the full capacity, do that first. Meb Keflezighi, probably the greatest American marathoner ever. He always talks about an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal.
Yeah, I love that you included that. That's the way I approach everything too.
It's a brilliant approach.
Yeah, it relieves so much pressure, I feel like.
A ton. And I think take that into your race. Set that establishment right up front. But then, like, as you get into the days, that belongs there as well. What is the ideal version of this day? Well, I hit it with that A goal strategy. But like, in training for Disney, I caught a knee injury in basketball, bone contusion. Dang. Okay, we're going to be on a B goal pace for a couple of weeks while this thing gets better. And giving yourself that grace also teaches you something about persevering through adversity and still striving towards your goal. Like, if you can't run, walk, but don't quit. And
for people that don't know, what is the A goal, B goal, C goal?
Oh, yeah, I guess I should actually explain that. So your A goal is like, if everything goes perfectly, this is what I'll do. So it's like for you, it's setting up 245 at Chicago or 250 at Chicago, and then you obliterated it, right?
240, yeah, sub 245, I guess was the A goal. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. I like 40 seconds under the A goal. So yeah.
Well, I nailed it. Yeah. Nailed it. So it's like if everything goes well, and I do training, really well, like this is what I need to surpass to say this was the most successful version of this. But don't make it binary. It's not a pass fail. Set a B goal so that if things start to fall apart, you have something to motivate you. So when I ran Disney, my A goal is 4 hours. My B goal is a PR. That gave me a 24-minute window that when I saw my pace drop below, I was like, I'm not going to make it. Well, there's no reason to just walk it out and throw in the towel. It took me about a mile, but then I realized oh, unless I completely crumble here, this is going to be the fastest I've ever run a marathon. And there is a lot of pride to take, and this is the best you have ever done. And it pushed me through to the end, and I ran Disney in 4:10. And so having a B goal to fall back on if your A goal goes tits up is incredibly helpful in making you still feel like the work was worth it. And then a C goal, which should be immensely achievable. If I ever run a marathon, the C goal is to finish the thing, just cross the finish line. And, technically I always throw it in a D goal, which is to do my best. But A, B, C is designed so that look, if I get injured and it just doesn't happen, don't beat yourself up. D goal achieved. But I don't need to express that because it is expressed in A, B, and C. And I think that is actually a good strategy for life too, because in the sailboat analogy where you have to be able to ride the winds and waves, you can't control everything. And to give it your best in spite of, some bad luck, for lack of a better description, is still incredibly admirable. John Wooden said, things tend to work out best for those who make the best of how things work out. And that is an incredible thing to tattoo that on my butt cheeks. I 100% believe in that, especially considering the experiences I've been through. Yeah. It's hey, if all of a sudden your body stops producing cortisol, make the best of it.
Yeah. It's all about the perspective.
100%. That's all you have, really.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I love the A goal, B goal, C goal. I think that's a great thing. And in that same chapter, you talked about the goal is success.
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
Success to me, and I think this is just universally true, but I don't want to act like I'm spitting facts here. Success is only ever one thing, and that is peace of mind. It doesn't matter what you're chasing. None of us asked to be born, but we have a life all the same. And we want to do our best with it. And peace of mind can be a very tricky thing because we have all these aspirations that are just going to bubble up naturally from our surroundings about what we want to achieve, who we want to be, the amount of influence we want to have. And if you set that thing at an unachievable rate, even if you have a good life by all exterior standards, you will feel that you've forever fallen short, and you'll live a life where you get to the end of it and you have regrets. I was never the person I wanted to be. like having spent time on a deathbed, I'm pretty obsessed with like that last 15 seconds before the lights go out. And I think life kind of boils down to 3 questions, which is, did I try my best? Did I make wise decisions? How did I treat people? And if I can answer all 3 of those questions in a way that gives me satisfaction, then I will have peace of mind. So that first one, did I try my best? It's really important to set those measures at something that, it doesn't need to be so easy that when you attain it, it feels like nothing. But it can't be so hard. Like if I go out on my next marathon and I set a 3-hour goal, like what am I doing? Like who chops an hour?
I've seen crazier things done.
Yeah, well, hey, if you believe in me, maybe I'll do it. But like, it's not self-serving, right? It's not, it doesn't have the proper humility to shape you in a positive way. So like playing with that tension so that peace of mind is achievable is important. And that's where all the things about like your balance in life, and that's why I have those 3 things. It's like, did I try my best? I think of that as like a physical. It's like I tell my kids, you want to be strong, smart, and kind. Those are the goals. I'll have them put their hands in and we'll like,
dude,
cheer.
This is actually, I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't know if you can see the poster on the wall over there. The 3 rules of life.
Yeah.
You have a much kinder way of saying it, but it's the same 3 embodiments that I've culminated.
Don't be an asshole. Is that don't be a dick?
Don't be a pussy.
Yep.
And then don't be
don't be an idiot.
Don't be an idiot.
Yeah.
Dude, that's okay. Don't be what are your 3 rules? Be smart.
Yep.
Don't be an idiot.
Yep.
Be kind.
Yep.
Don't be an asshole.
And don't be a pussy. Be strong.
Dude.
That's it.
That's
that is
incredible.
The well-rounded life. And the reason is because it's physical, intellectual, and relational. Like at your heart, your soul.
Yeah. It applies to every situation in life.
Yeah, that's the lighthouse, man. Like you don't need to know like how am I going to get there? Like what's the path look like? What are the steps? Like how do I navigate these waters? Just focus on that lighthouse of strong, smart, and kind. Yeah. Anti-asshole, idiot, anti-pussy. And
I like your version better.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to be positive. And just like forge towards it with all the things you set up. And you will, in that effort, you'll be abolishing the potential for regret. And along the way, you'll mess up, but that's where recovery comes in. That's where grace comes in. And, if you have the right people around you, like they'll be forgiving. And, you just reassess, get back onto the direction towards that lighthouse. So for me, that's the reason I put that chapter in there is so that people can, along the way, there's a reason this isn't called an amateur's guide to becoming a marathoner. Like I'm not going to get you there. Like, I mean, look, you guys have heard some of the stories now about the way I approach my marathons. It's not like some intellectual rigor, but you have somebody with you who's been there before and understands failure and stumbling, and you don't need to beat yourself up. Just like get back on path,
right.
Do better tomorrow. No, that's the thing.
Yeah, man. It's like, and you're probably not going to have an elite Olympic trials runner reading your book necessarily.
They don't need it.
I don't think you want that audience, but it like resonates with their average person, really, which is the vast majority of people, obviously, is like somebody who reached a point in life where they need something else, or where they're searching for that next thing that's gonna continue, let them continue down their path of life. And I think that's the vast majority of people, and I think it's gonna resonate with so many people. How long has the book been out? Because it's available right now, right?
It's 2 weeks today. 2 weeks today. Yeah. So. Most people listening to this, you probably have a Spotify subscription, and it's free to anybody who has a premium subscription on Spotify. If you don't have Spotify, and if you're okay with me shouting this out,
of course, that's why we're here.
I gave anybody who's listening to this, if you use the code SWITCHBACK, just decide to use your company because I think what you do with that company and giving to people who are trying to get into the effort made for a good promo code. But if you use the code SWITCHBACK on Apple Books, you can get the book for $4.99 on audio. And for me, when I started running, listening to podcasts and audiobooks while I was running, it gave me companionship, it gave me motivation, and it gave me an extra amount of attention and education to the effort. And so I thought that'd be an excellent thing for anybody who's interested in picking it up. And if I can put my sales hat on for a minute, $4.99 is a hell of a deal for a book. I mean, it is. It's like
100%.
Somebody put a lot of time and thought and experience, and if they did it well, like you are gleaning a ton. Like you get a coffee for $4.99 and you'll forget about it in an hour, but you get a ton, and if it's the right thing and it lands and it tracks,
so much value.
Through the roof. And I'm so grateful to the people who have written things before me, because as I was trying to rebuild my life, that cumulative knowledge and experience really changed. So to me, that made like sense for like, hey, this is a good outlet for it. But if you listen to any other platform, it's there. It's distributed across like 45 different audio services.
And the name of it looks like we're running an amateur's companion to becoming a marathoner.
That's it.
Dude,
and
I'm not lying. It's good, man. I really, really enjoy it. I think it's so like raw and real. And again, it resonates with people who aren't like a traditional marathon runner. Like I'm not a traditional marathon runner. I've done like 5 by now, and it resonates with me because I'm just like a regular guy.
Yeah.
Who just like likes running, not for necessarily the like performance aspect. I just like the idea of setting goals, going out and doing them, and then applying those lessons learned to life. And I think that's, the vast majority of people that run marathons do it for that exact reason. And so I think it's going to resonate with so many people. It definitely resonated with me.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I'll read this before we wrap, which is just, I wrote this probably 12, 14 months ago, like as I was wrapping up the book and like getting it ready for production on the initial drafts. In the references section, my favorite social media accounts are the ones that make me want to put social media down and get moving. Huge shout outs to Jeremy Miller and Matt Choi specifically.
This is in the book?
Right at the end, dude. Right here.
Oh my gosh.
And I wrote it long before you and I had ever had any interaction. I've been like, you've been a massive inspiration as I tried to like pull this into my life.
Oh my goodness.
Said they're strong runners, but not elite. They're 2 amateurs who got into content creation and really opened my eyes to the daily life of running. They're larger accounts now, but Jeremy specifically had less than 5,000 followers when I found him, and I can say his methodology hasn't changed too radically. They're both great examples of what a huge impact the dedication to running can have on an individual's life and the community of people that individual supports.
Dude.
So I just wanted you to know, I put it there in print. It's been with me for a long time, and you've been a great influence on my life, and hopefully that's a little bit of encouragement to keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Oh my gosh, man. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure. Right? People helping people, powerful stuff.
That's right, man. That's what it's all about. Like at the end of the day, like you asked me earlier, like if I would still make content or still do what I'm doing now. And I think I'm passionate about content. And you could probably say the same for you too, is like I'm passionate about content, video content, whatever, but it's like the act of helping people that I think is what really makes me want to do it, is like, I don't know, going and doing something, documenting it, and then sharing it with people, not for like my own vanity or whatever, but because it's like, I know that could help other people. And so I think, I don't know, that's why I do it. And hearing how it can help somebody and like a tangible, a real human benefiting from like some dumb Instagram videos I put out, like that gives me so much motivation to keep doing it.
Those are digestible nuggets of wisdom for the effort. Stephen King, in his memoir on writing, he writes, "The purpose is to enrich people." That's it. And enrich yourself, of course, but it's like you make this thing, and for the most part, it passes. But a few people will pick that up and actually let it into their lives, and it'll change them for the better. And when you get to the end of it all, and those, before the lights go out, knowing that you have helped others is a huge slice of that pie of, do I have regrets? And so I think whatever evolution your effort takes, like it's got the right focus, it's easy to understand. And, I love being on, but, for the most part, I'll go back to being like just a dude who follows you and benefits from the work you put out there. And just know that at least there's one guy out there who's been made better for it and is very, very grateful.
Oh, dude. Again, I really, really appreciate that. I definitely want to ask you a few questions about like the book process.
Sure.
How long from start to finish did it take you to write? Like when did you initially start writing with the intent to put this book together?
Yeah, I started by writing an essay around the Chicago Marathon because, like, to, an earlier part of this discussion, writing helps me make sense of my experiences and to kind of encapsulate them. The guys who founded Pixar, they talk about giving the suitcase a handle. And what they mean is, like, you have this experience, it's this big unwieldy thing. It's like, wow, I went through a lot there. And training for a marathon is a lot. It's several months of experience. And so by breaking it down and writing it, I give it a handle, like something that makes the unwieldy experience I can hang on to it. I've encapsulated it in this little essay. I know what it meant to me now. I started writing that, and I just felt like in the effort of writing it, I got like inspired to run another one. And I felt like as I was going, I'd sit down to like work on another work, and I would find I had way more in my head to say about running. And so it's like, hey, let's not fight this. Like, this is the way the wind is blowing. Let's ride it. And so that started to form into structure. And, as I'm shaping out this marathon training plan, and that's what gave the book its shape of being 20 weeks. And when you talk about rediscovering your why and having a really strong why, as I would rediscover my motivation for the marathon on a weekly basis and the training was hard, I found new stories about like my past. And it's interesting how taking an activity really seriously, and writing is very therapeutic in a lot of ways, makes you recontextualize the events of a past in a way that serves you presently. The past is never dead. It's not even the past. It's living with you now in your memory. That's a Hemingway. And so it just kind of evolved, and somewhere around like what became like the goal is success chapter we talked about, I was like, okay, I have enough here. I can roll this out. And so I just decided, well, let's do a couple thousand words per chapter. That's an easy amount for me. I can grind that out pretty effortlessly. And we'll just break these down into topics that I would share with people in the approach. And I was writing it before I'd finished the marathon. So from conception to finishing, I probably wrote the first draft in like 4 months.
That's pretty quick.
It's when I get rolling, I can produce some words.
Yeah.
And then, the first draft, it's not really that important. It's like, you'll make it cleaner. And so then I spent the next couple months like shaping, and after the third or fourth draft, I let a couple buddies read it. They got their feedback, what's impactful, what's not. I went through it one more time, and then I gave it to a person who did like the real nitty-gritty spot check of the editing. It doesn't matter how many times you go through it, you just leave a bunch of errors everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I did all the graphic design myself, which I'm really proud of, like the presentation of the book.
Can I see the cover of it?
Yeah. So that's a picture I took when I was running Ragnar from Denver to Fort Collins. So one of these van relay races.
I've heard those are a ton of fun.
Dude, they're a blast, man. If you can get 11 dudes together, enough good runners that, man, if you did like a hood to coast type of running to Mount Hood to the coast of Oregon, I bet you guys could put together a hell of a competitive team.
That'd be great, man. I've heard they're a ton of fun. I like that team aspect of it.
Oh, it's great, man. I ran hood to coast, and I pulled together a bunch of buddies, like both my brothers, my high school best friend, some dudes I've been close to that are like now in other states, and we all got together. And it was just awesome. We really reconnected, and you're never closer to anyone than the people you suffer with.
Yeah.
So like we all come out of that, and like that, we wrapped that race back in August. The text chain is still thriving. Like we like need each other now. So yeah, I recommend that to anybody. It compresses the communal aspect of running and like a lot of the distance training, but you might run 17 miles in the race total, but it breaks it up into chunks. So it's manageable for real beginners. So But yeah, the graphic design, literally everything in the book was of my own creation. And once I finally got some critical reviews from like Kirkus, and I had some like marketing calls, and the feedback I recently got, like a guy who's a designer online who was like praising the cover and the design of the book. I was like, you're the first dude who's giving me a shout out on my graphic design chops. And it meant a lot to me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like you try to make it good.
It did. What I've learned with graphic design, I'm so bad with it, is like simplicity is the key. Like, don't try to add too much.
Get into these crazy, that filter drop down will wreck you.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it.
And that's I think why that baby works so well is because it's like, it's simple. It's like
clean.
The photo, it's clean. The text is, I like it a lot. Dude, that's so cool to have like a physical creation.
Yeah, it's not an insubstantial satisfaction to have a book on your shelf that like I created this thing, I built it.
Right.
You know, so much of the content today is ephemeral. And so even though most of my sales will be audio, it's like, here's the thing. Like I built it myself. So the whole process, it depends, you know, for each individual, like how good you are at it. Honestly, the most difficult work, if I guess it depends what your skill set is, but like writing it was easy for me. It's once you finish it, and then like you have to read and edit the audiobook and put it together. And you have to schedule all the launch and learn the distribution platforms. And it just takes a while to cobble it all together.
Yeah. And you self-published, right?
Self-published. It's funny. I talked to a lot of agents prior. And, you know, some of them are just like, I don't have time for you. But some of them took time and gave me like incredible advice, which I'm grateful for. And it's like, well, if you have all the skill set to do your own publishing, like for a first-time author that doesn't have like, you know, look, if I already had, you know, 500,000 Instagram followers, anybody would take my business.
Right.
I wouldn't even need a good idea because like your marketing arm is already built.
Yeah.
But like if you don't have that, then like a publisher is not going to do that much for you. They're going to make it look professional. They'll handle a lot of the production quality. And that is a great boon if you're really busy on other things. But it's also a cost.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was able to do all that myself. And then it's just like, it's all an education. Like, how do you launch a book? How do you like get the word out there? If you have a large service or something that you do that you're drawing people to, and the book is kind of like a marketing extension, you can justify a lot bigger advertising budget.
Right.
You know, if you don't, like me, it's like, well, we got to go the PR route. So like I found people who it's like, this is a message that makes sense. So people like you, Jackson Mitchell, Joe Rinaldi, I'll be going on the Diz Runs podcast, like a couple of weeks.
How long are you in Austin for?
I'll be leaving Friday morning.
Okay, I can maybe connect you with some other people I know locally that have podcasts that would probably love to have you on.
Dude, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Heck yeah. Dude, it's like, I mean, the book is great. It's like, I used to do a lot of marketing and like photo and video and stuff. And I would tell every client is like, we can make the coolest video in the entire world for like your product, which might be the coolest product in the whole world. But if nobody knows about it, like if you can't show it to people and they can't see it, it's like, then what's the point? It's the same thing with like a book or a piece of work. Is like, you could have the best book in the entire world, but if nobody knows about it, like from a business standpoint, what value is it really?
You write something for it to be read.
Exactly, right. Yeah. And I'm sure, I mean, I think about this all the time with like the content is like, or even the podcast is a good example. Like if not a single person listened to this, like, would you still do it? I'm sure you'd still write a book if not a single person read it, but
100%. It
makes it better when you can get it out to the world.
Yeah. Jackson asked me about that on like my own goals and like what would count as like the book being successful. And it was successful the moment I knew it was good.
Yeah.
Like I want as many people to read it because like I want it to be able to enrich people's lives. And you know, you need a reader base for that to happen, for enough people to hear about it. Like it's like throwing seeds in the soil. Like most of them aren't going to make it, but the ones that make it are what bear fruit. And so you need to give it a good effort. And if you put that much effort into building the thing, you need to give it a little bit of effort so it can like breathe and have life. And so that's why I'm trying to make some of the marketing rounds. There's not like a sales goal that'll make me happy. There's not like, there's 0% chance I get rich off this thing, right? It's just like, let's give it the best push we can. I mean, my personal goal is just like 100 Amazon reviews. And it's like, well, that's enough of a base of feedback that I can then, like, for the next effort, take it and hopefully build a little bit more momentum around it to say like, hey, look, I have a talent here. There are people who appreciate it, and this is worth investing in.
Yeah.
And hopefully, in the years to come, I will be wiser and more insightful and have more to offer than I have in like an initial book effort. And so it's a milestone along the way, and I love it for what it is. It's really like my first, I've long aspired like, man, if I could be a writer, that'd be the thing. And this is like my first baby, man. It's like, okay, here's the thing. And it is good. And I no longer hesitate to say that.
Yeah.
And I used to not have the confidence for it, but yeah, we'll see. Like I'm already happy with it. And then, I got to figure out what I want to write next. I got so many ideas nipping at me, and I'm not really like, my life isn't just running. Right? And so I'm a little nervous about like, well, okay, you wrote a running book and then like a science fiction novel. Like, where are you going here? But we'll figure that out.
Just do what makes you happy. Do what you want to do.
That's the ticket.
Yeah, dude. I love that, man. Again, I just love seeing people that do the thing that they love. Like it's so sad. I have so many friends in my hometown in Wyoming where they they're so good at like making music or drawing or something. And then like I've seen their work, but they don't pursue it because they're stuck in that other third of life where they just have to spend too much time working and they don't have time to pursue that hobby. It's so sad. So I love when people are able to like take that passion and that hobby and turn it into something. I've said it 6 times on this podcast now, but I love it so much.
Well, it's true, man. And that's what, like, look, ultimately, when I think about you, that's what I think about. And that's why I started this off asking that question, like, man, if I gave you 100 million, what are you you're going to be you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I admire most of all. And I think it takes an intentionality. And, I think Travis Osborne in your last podcast was talking about this a little bit when he set up his own practice. Is like, this thing's going to tank for a year.
Yeah.
Not tank, you're building something, but it's like, I am going to bleed for this.
Yep.
And before it becomes something that can stand on its own. And at some point I had to accept that. And it's part of the, my whole thing about give yourself some grace. Like, it's okay to have bad days. Like, it's more about the persistence than the performance, because with something like writing, like, I'm in the first stages, So the ability to get it out to finish, like, that's what teaches you something. And I think a lot of people, if you make music, you probably want to make like a perfect album. Just make an album.
Yeah.
It'll teach you what you need to know about making a good album, and be okay with having some failures under the belt. Like, as a writer, everybody wants to come out like burning the doors down and like winning these awards and have everybody, oh, what a talent. And it's like, you can't think that way. Yeah. That's not the important thing. Does it nourish you? Does it enrich others? Then it is worthy. And once I got my head around that, I had all the peace of mind I needed.
Yeah. Paralysis by analysis is a real killer.
Dude, it's brutal.
Yeah. But dude, this was so much fun, man. I think we talked about everything I wanted to talk about.
It's been
almost 2 hours.
I love it, man. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, dude. One other question I had about the book process is like the audiobook. You recorded it yourself, which I love.
Yeah.
I've heard that's a pretty grueling process.
Yeah, I mean, you're reading and it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And you stumble, and so then you have to edit the whole thing. And you've probably done like some podcast editing, and it's like the editing can be tedious.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you have a lot of errors or nitpicks you have to go through and find, because there's no way around it. You have to listen to the entire thing.
Yep.
So you spend hours and you hope that you have like a quiet, good space and like the recording is clean so you don't have to do it again. And then you spend more hours editing the thing.
Did you do all of it by yourself?
Yeah.
Like the whole setting up the microphone and pushing
Yep.
record and everything. Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, I have a decent background in that. So like I knew what I was doing,
Right.
but it's just like, it's going to take hours. Like, it's just like, it's going to take time. And so I just chipped away at it the same way as like you get better at running. It's like, here, designate this, do it. And then once it was finished, I think the hardest thing when you're doing it is like, you've been over this. Like by time you're reading it into the microphone, you are bored of your own words. It's like, I'm not that brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and so the hardest thing is, it's like radio. One of the lessons they tell you is if you feel it when you say it, they'll feel it when they hear it.
Yeah.
So just be expressive. And especially like reading it myself instead of hiring like a professional talent. It's like, who's going to have more passion for your story than you, man? Like, get into it. Like, show up for this.
There's some cool parts where you like fluctuate your voice and you can, you know, you change the tone or something and you can like really tell, like, if somebody else were to read that, they wouldn't know to put emphasis on that part or something.
I mean, I am trying. Like, I think people will feel the effort in listening.
Oh, without a doubt. In a good way, though, obviously.
Well, I appreciate that, man. But yeah, it's so anyway, like the whole thing is me. And I think that one of the things I try to advise people on is just, this is true with anything, but like measure less, relate more. And so when you take in like any work of art, there's nothing wrong with trying to judge it on its quality. Like, feel free, but like you're engaging with this thing, and the way you can best glean from it is like try to relate to what the artist intended. And if you can do that, you have the best chance of getting the most out of it for yourself. And that's the reason I wanted to read it personally, is I wanted them to feel connected to the entirety of the effort.
Yeah.
Instead of like shipping it to a professional who might have been technically a better reader than I am, but they're not going to care for it the way I do. Yeah. So we'll see if that pays off at all. I might have also just been pinching pennies, right? It's like,
I feel like it's more fulfilling when you see it all the way through for yourself, and you know, like it's 100% you.
Yeah, it was for me. It was definitely fulfilling for me.
That's cool, man. Where is the best place for people to find you and connect with you, and get the book? Everywhere you can get the book.
No, I appreciate it, man. So I don't do a ton of social media. Like, really, I'm only on Instagram. It's at Dustin Riedesel, same as the name, all one word. I have, like I said about social media earlier, I've loved maintaining relationships via that platform. But the book is on, like, you're going to be able to find it any online retailer. Amazon is probably the best and easiest place to get it. Audio-wise, Spotify, Audible.com, Apple Books. You know, I tried to get the distribution arm rolling, so you shouldn't be able to miss it. But
heck yeah,
it looks like we're running, or search for my name, and you'll stumble across it.
Beautiful. I'll put a link in the description of the podcast too.
Appreciate that.
And the code Switchback.
Code Switchback, and that's for $5 at Apple Books, or you can stream it if you're a premium subscriber on Spotify.
Beautiful. Dude, well, thanks for coming on, man. This is a blast.
Yeah, buddy. It's my pleasure. Thank you. It really is. Honor is all on this side of the table. Hugely appreciate you.
Dude, you make my job easy. I just sit here, ask questions, get a listen.
Well, if there's one thing I can do, I can talk.
You do all the work. This is fun, though, man. I think you provided a ton of value, all these little nuggets of knowledge, and I think people are going to get a lot out of it.
Dude, appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you in the next one.